Thelemites. So from the Greek word thelema, which means will, there's a saying amongst Thelemites: do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love under law, love under will. And if you do the gematria, the way of assigning numbers to letters, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law is 93. And love under law, love under will is also 93. So very much the point of thelema is it's a radical individuality where you discover your true will, and manifesting your true will is the great work in life. Now, your true will should never contradict or conflict with another person or another entity. Then it wouldn't be your true will. So a lot of people get stuck on this, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And they're like, oh, I can do anything I want. And no, you can't. You have to always be doing your will, your true will, be living your most genuine self. And the second part, love under law, love under will, that's an even more important part. So the word thelema in Greek means will, and agape means love. And the love is at least as important, if not more important, than the notion of will. Here we see the Holy Spirit dropping through the eye of Ra into the goblet of fire and rose petals. That has profound mystical significance, but we don't need to go into that right now. So how does one become a Thelemite? Well, it's a system. It is not non-eclectic. There is a tradition that's handed down. It's all based on the writing of Aleister Crowley, who was drawing from the Golden Dawn and from a whole history of medieval grimoires and whatnot to create this synthetic mystical system in the 20th century that has this unique quality to it. To me, it answers questions that other places don't. It also draws from a lot of traditions without reducing them or appropriating them. It's not a big community, but it has a lot of impact on the world. There's a fair amount of Thelemites out there. They're a lot fewer than you'd think, depending on the amount of culture that they affect the world. Supposedly the Jonas Brothers are Thelemites. Anyway, so if you want to get involved with thelema, or with this group called the OTO, the Ordo Templaris Orientalis, the Order of the Eastern Temple, you just start going to these things that are called Gnostic masses, which are beautiful rituals. I absolutely love them. And then you kind of hang around, and if you want to join up, you start taking initiations. There's a level of 10 initiations. The first one is called a Minerval, where you just turn your will into the order and you become a guest. And in the first degree, you're actually in the order and you start having duties and whatnot. It's a lovely system. The initiations are beautiful. If you have never been in an initiation ceremony, imagine you are acting in a play and you don't have the script, but everybody else does. And interesting things happen. So there's a series of initiations. This is considered to be high magic, sophisticated magic that draws upon correspondences and hermeticism. Hermeticism, from the god Hermes, is an ancient system going back to Egypt, supposedly, and the god Thoth, that shows by manipulating one thing, you can manipulate another. And the notion is, by doing magic, by manipulating things in the world and manipulating yourself, you'll fully realize your true nature. Part of doing that is to cross the abyss, where the ego completely dies. But on the other side of that, one gains knowledge and conversation with one's holy guardian angel. In fact, so much of the practice of thelema is cultivating a relationship with your holy guardian angel, who is that voice inside you deep down that's different from you, is external from you. It is not just you. It is that voice in the silence. And so much of it is cultivating all of these ritual practices and meditations to find the greatest version of yourself that is in knowledge and conversation with that holy guardian angel. I've always thought it sounds far more Christian than people let it on to be. They do have an organization called the EGC, the Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica, and here's a picture from a Gnostic Mass. That is the part of the order, well, it's part of the OTO that does the masses, performs baptisms, and does sacraments and whatnot. Also, with in thelema is the notion of sex magic. I have a close friend who just refers to himself as a Thelemite, as a revolutionary sex magician. What's sex magic? And we came across it a little bit in Alex Marr. Sex magic really draws from this character right here, Pascal Beverly Randolph, who was a half-black man in the late 19th century. Really interesting. And he wrote all of these books for married couples to engage in sexual practices. And then at the moment of orgasm, to focus on their human connection and to focus on taking the energy there and casting it outward so that they would realize their will, so they could make things happen. So basically, it makes sex like a vision board. Anyway, sex magic is found throughout all of these groups. It often gets connected to Tantra, but it has nothing to do with Tantra in the East. It all goes back to this guy, Pascal Beverly Randolph. There are some non-OTO orders of Thelemites, like the AA, which is a secretive order kind of within and associated with the OTO, where one studies with a teacher, and that teacher is a teacher, and then as you study, you have students, but you never know anybody except for your teacher on the top and your students on the bottom, and they instruct you in magical practices. There's also an order that was started in the late 20th century, but gets wind in the Ordo Templi Astartes. They're out of California. So this would be an order that does thelema, but is not associated with the OTO. We have the Typhonians. They're often in Europe. They're kind of obnoxious human beings who try to use thelema in order to conjure up the Dark Lords from the H.P. Lovecraft universe. Then you have the Temple of Set, which was founded by a guy who was actually from UC Santa Barbara, and they do sort of practical left-hand path sorcery, but with an alignment with thelema. And more and more and more. There are all sorts of groups. These groups are wacky. So take a break. So what's it all about? Esotericism, the occult, occulture, hermeticism. What are these terms? What are all these symbols? What are all this wackiness going on? Well, the thing I want you to get is the stuff doesn't come from nowhere. A lot of it really gets going in the 19th century. And in the 19th century, in Europe, there was a wide range of occult and secret discourse. And people, the literati, the intelligentsia, would hang out in salons, which were little hangouts where people would hang and talk. And they were obsessed at the time with ancient religions. And to some degree, they're European, the religions of the people they colonized. So they thought about these, and they thought about ways to draw upon ancient religions and foreign cultures to them in order to have greater self-understanding, in order to reject the types of rationality that was prominent in Europe at the time that they found lacking. They were really into Greek and Egyptian stuff. And when you read through a lot of the materials from the time, you can't help but think it's like, man, if they'd been hanging out in Mexico City, we'd have a whole different set of gods they were obsessed with, or if they knew more about India. So they set out these systems to correlate deities and ideas that were considered universal between cultures or to have correlations between cultures. This builds on Hermeticism, an old system of setting up secret correspondences that can be used in magic. So now we have this, I often think, as I look back at it, I was raised to believe that anybody doing non-Christian anything was a Satanist, but nothing looks all that satanic out here, whatever Satanism means. It oddly looks really connected to Christianity. It looks more like connecting to the angels in the Christian area, connecting to the higher God, connecting to Christ in ways that are more profound than just sitting in church and looking up and giving it over to God, or whatever you say, or having the name of Christ written on your heart. What does that mean? I don't know. These are actually techniques and methods to become more spiritually engaged. So we have this term now called occulture, the occult milieu. This is the subculture of the occult and secret wisdom that kind of makes its way into our daily world, such as we've seen with tarot. So let me come back to this term esoteric and exoteric. Both of them are about a secret. Well, what is that secret? I'll tell you. The secret is that what is above is also below. That your world is an illusion. And your notion that you yourself are limited is false. If you saw your true self, you would see that that true self is limitless, unbound, is pure radiant light, is goodness, is glory. There is a kingdom of God, and it's within you. There's truth in all religions. And by practicing rituals, you can understand the truth of religion. Because the truth of religion has to be acted out in ritual. It can't be just something that's told. The truth is unspeakable. This is Gnosticism. Gnosticism is the realization of truth, and that truth will set you free. It will remove all your pain. In Gnosticism, the creator God, the God that created this world and rules over it with an iron fist and manipulates everything, is actually evil. He sucks. He usurped the true God. So there's a true God that is pure goodness and light. Then there is an evil God who basically covers up the true God and creates a world. And that world is designed to confuse you and think that you are limited. It is up to you to see through the illusions of this falsely created earth, to see the truth of your own nature. And that truth of your own nature is the truth of that forgotten and unknown God, whom you can see if you look behind the lies of the creator God who's made this shitty little world all around us. Yet, that one great true God still shines his light, and that light sees through the illusion. So it's very much light and darkness. Limitation is darkness. Light is lack of limitation. Light is limitless. It's about taking all the darkness in the world that you can clearly see and filling it up with light so that it can no longer be limited, so it can no longer cause pain. So I grabbed this picture because I thought the guy kind of looked like me a little bit. I think there's actually a counterculture within our culture that is Gnostic. I think there is a lot of esotericism that we find within our culture, but we don't articulate well. There's a great secret that unites all of the religions and all of the secrets under so much Western cultures. However, this secret is pretty apparent in these. People talk about it all the time. All these religious movements are about communication with non-human superhumans and transformation of yourself into a superhuman. The secret and the thing that is beneath all of these magic systems is transformation, and transforming yourself into that Most High God that you have always been in the first place. It's not me, Dr. Ulrich, as an ego, but the limitless entity that is wearing the clothes of this ridiculous man. It's the limitless love that is below the energy that's slowed down so much that you see a bowling ball or a table. So instead, and what the secret tells us, instead of seeking a new salvation from yourself, instead of seeking a new salvation to get rid of sin, to remove original sin, because that's all that evil got, positive, all that stupid crap. Your goal as a Gnostic is to see that the only sin you have is to feel limited. When you realize your full, transcendent human potential, you are united with the source. And that makes you powerful, but in a genuine way, in a way that you can act freely. And I would say it frees you from pain. The light frees you from pain. Ethics are a problem here. Wow, are they? It's pretty easy to posit these arguments and then go and be, a fascist or a Nazi. Julius Evola was a great mystic in the 20th century. He was a straight up fascist Nazi. Ethics are a problem here. If you believe that you are the Most High God, you have to recognize everything else is the Most High God and act accordingly. And far too often people believe that they are the Most High God acting in a limitless manner and then are violent and horrible to others. Ethics are a problem. Ethics remain a problem with all of this thinking. All right, one more break. All right, so as you're reading this book, I want you to think about the 4 characters that we read about today. So we read about, this is Morpheus over here. Here's an actual picture of her, Morpheus Ravenna, who's the neo-pagan who's becoming a big deal in and of herself. Here's the great Aleister Crowley, who was the 19th, 20th century occultist, deemed the most wicked man in the world, who founded the OTO. Here is Henry Victor Anderson, who founded the Fairies, and that's a group that we're going to talk about a lot as we move forward. And finally, here's Gerald Gardner, the man who invented modern witchcraft, and he's a British guy. So let's wrap it up here and talk about takeaways. How is this magic? How does it connect to other stuff we've looked at? Where does it come from? Does it actually connect with the lore from the other units? This new magic we're talking about is about the self and the unlimited power of the self, a boundless self that you've never known yourself to be, but you've always been. Does that seem like the type of entities we were dealing with, the type of selves we were dealing with in other places? And I would argue beneath all of this neo-paganism and all of these new religious movements is a reconfigured sense of the self as limitless, evolving in a teleological way, in a direction toward perfection. All right, so here are some takeaways. Magic rituals here change the world according to one's will. This is the heart of all magical practices. You're doing rituals to alter the world and the self according to your own will, not your mere desires, but your true will in the world. There are no witches. There never have been. But we can become witches, and we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to fear being murdered by being witches. And in fact, witches, one of the things that they regularly do are practices called binding, in which they will bind people who are trying to do them harm, or bind them from doing themselves harm. So as a witch, you are charged with preventing pain and danger in the world by binding destructive forces. The truth of the self is that your very self is eternal, free, potent, and without pain. It's up to you to realize that, because you're already there. You already are that. It's not a point of realizing something new. It's a point of realizing what you already are. There's no salvation. There's nothing to be saved from. There's only the realization of the truth of your very own self. Now, the world is inhabited by non-human things. Even if those are just psychological constructs, there are non-human things that you interact with that are invisible, and you can manipulate them. As a witch, as a sorcerer, as a magician, you are a powerful active agent. You are not a suffering, limited thing that is acted upon. As the Most High God and as a sorcerer, you act. You are not acted upon. Energy and vitality circulates everywhere. And with practice and with rituals, you can manipulate that energy and vitality that circulates everywhere. Finally, what does it mean to be human? I want you to think about what it means to be human here. Think about how the notion of the human supports the idea of magic. Think about the human as magician here versus the human as witch or bewitched in Favasada. Think about how the notion of the human as limitless, most high God contrasts with the different notions of the human individual that we've seen throughout this class up to this point, and the human individuals that you meet in your daily life. All right, welcome to the last section of the history of witchcraft, magic, and occultism. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.